right, we are live.
Okay. We ready?
Yep.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Welcome to Beyond the Brink, the show that explores global events that are pushing people to their limits and driving them to the brink of change. I'm Christy, and my amazing host, Melissa, is here joining me.
Hi there. How's everybody doing?
Just terrific. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
So if you're tuning in on YouTube or Rumble, show us some love by subscribing to our channel and hitting that like button. And for those of you who are joining us on X Spaces, please share the space to the... Uh-oh. Sorry about that. My phone's doing feedback.
It's the feedback loop, the dreaded feedback
There we go.
loop.
Well, as I was saying, if you're joining us on Spaces, please share the space. And right now we'll get some more people in here. You can catch up on all of our previous episodes by visiting our website, vitabroadcastnetwork.com, or hear us on your favorite podcast platform just by searching us using the handle at Vita Broadcast. We are super excited to welcome our friend Scott Wetzel, who is going to be here to share knowledge surrounding food and nutrition, with the main focus on Wise Traditions and exploring 11 dietary principles. Without further ado, let's bring on our guest, Scott. Let me get him out of here and get him in here.
Get him in here. I'm so excited for this show.
I am too. I'm trying to get out of the feedback loop here.
All right. Welcome to Beyond the Brink, Scott. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
So glad to have you. I am going to we met Scott a couple of years ago, and through Bitcoin and a few Bitcoin groups, and discovered that he is a wealth of knowledge surrounding food and nutrition, and had some really good conversations with him about it. And I would love for him to share it with all of you guys. Trying to make you a co-host here so that you can share your screen whenever you're ready. But tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Like you said, Melissa, I kind of stumbled upon you guys through Bitcoin groups, and all of us were like-minded. And through kind of our online community, we just organically grew to sharing our knowledge of what you knew and what Christy knew and what everyone knew. And eventually I started sharing just my own journey through health and food with my own family. And then the more I grew throughout the last couple of years, the more I shared and the more it resonated. And so that's kind of how I came about to the food. Like eating so healthy is pretty much through family.
Yeah. Well, you're a stay-at-home dad also, aren't you?
Yeah. So I have 3 girls under 5. A 5-year-old who just turned 5 on yesterday. And
happy birthday.
Yeah, and a 2-year-old, a little older than 2, and then a 5-month-old. Yeah.
You have your hands full for sure.
Yep, have my hands full.
I've always been intrigued, Scott, by some of the things that you've learned and had implemented with your own family, which are some of the things you're going to share with us tonight. You basically took your family out of a food matrix that and taken them into a different direction that would be a clean start, if you will, especially with your children, and getting the proper nutrition from the proper sources right at their early part in life. And that's very impressive. I mean, even from making your own formulas and things like that, that's pretty cool. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say tonight.
Yeah. That's a good segue to kick off. I have just a short story on really how I was launched into thinking differently about food. It was with our firstborn. She was 4.5 weeks early, so nothing too medically serious, but just early. But because she was so early, my wife couldn't produce enough breast milk.
Mm.
So after like 1 or 2 weeks, we decided to supplement with formula. And so like any other person, I went to the store and looked up online the different baby formulas and started doing powdered formula. And from like 2 weeks old to about 4 weeks old, she kept getting more uncomfortable, wasn't sleeping well. And then around 5 weeks, she developed a little rash on her butt. It was just like looked like a little cut. And so we went into the pediatrician and we said, hey, okay, we got a rash here, but it's a little more than a rash. It's more like an open sore. What is it? What, what's going on? Expecting to hear that the pediatrician would know exactly what this is. And of course she didn't. And she said, well, here, let's just get some steroid cream on it and it'll heal it up. And that was the first red flag. I said, steroid cream. I said, this is just a 5-week-old child. Why do we need to do steroid cream? What is it? Why would steroid cream fix this? Or what's the correlation? And she said, well, we don't know, but it's just a rash and that'll help. And that was the first kind of red flag. I was like, I didn't like it. So we didn't do the steroid cream, but a week later, it got worse. It got to be like an inch and a half big sore on her tush. And for a little infant, that's a lot.
Poor baby.
For a baby, and wasn't sleeping. Every 30 minutes, she was, during the night, was up, groaning, grunting. And so getting pretty desperate and sleep deprived, and your first child, you're not sure what to do, and you're kind of thinking the worst always. My brother, who is a chiropractor, recommended, hey, why don't you try making your own formula? I said, well, make your own formula? What do you mean? You can do that? How do you do that? What do you use? And we used just a basic formula recipe with we used goat's milk, maple syrup, some molasses, probiotics for kids, fish oil for kids, bunch of just stuff that you would buy, but they're just raw ingredients. Put in a blender and gave it to her. After about 6 feedings, which is about 24 hours, 30 hours, the sore had healed completely.
Wow.
So that was my red pill. That was my wake up call to know that there's something wrong. It's a general statement, right? There's something wrong with the food chain, but it opened my eyes that there are other things that can help heal. And that was just being sleep deprived in your only child. That was like, it hit me on the head, and it was the biggest wake up call I've ever had.
Yeah. That's incredible. How wonderful that you were able to take the initiative and look that up and figure that out and do it, try it, have the courage to try it, right? To go outside of the comfort zone and then see it with your own eyes. I mean, that is very quick for a rash like that to clear up on a baby's tush.
Well, just look, what is it during the COVID lockdowns? I believe we were being told by our CDC that don't make your own baby formula. It could be very dangerous, but we had a baby formula shortage. And it was like, and this, we had already known what you were doing and everything. We thought that was so cool. But to hear that in the mainstream media, you can really do a lot of damage. And here you prove that it was actually healing. So it's healing the exterior. Can you imagine the healing on the interior, the inside of what was happening? That's incredible. And I think you also got to follow the money on who makes those formulas.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And if you decide to really research formula as an example, look at different formulas from around the world, what different countries have as regulations versus what the US has as regulations versus even baby food choices in stores. It's pretty small. And so that was another reason why I decided to just take it in my own hands, and then come to realize that's what we've done for thousands of years.
Right. Wow. So did you actually make all of the baby food then?
Yep. After that, made formula for her, and then for my second, and then for my third, she's not there yet, but I will if she needs to. And then baby purees, just would make it yourself. Regular food, you cook yourself and then put it in a
Right.
blender and freeze it. And that's all baby formula is.
That's right.
So
That's
I
awesome.
got to say, it works the same on animals too. We had that epiphany with our own animals, and they went from one went from near death to thriving health just by cooking our own foods.
Right. And one other point about you mentioned the CDC and shying us away. It's also ingrained in most pediatricians. I mean,
Sure.
we went back to the pediatrician and said, "Look, the rash is healed." Said, "Oh, what did you do?" I said, "Oh, we started making our own baby formula." He looked at me straight in the face and said, "I don't recommend that." And I said, "Well, why?" She just healed the rash on her own.
Yeah.
Well, you don't know what's in the baby formula. And I said, I do know what's in the baby formula. I made it,
Right.
and it was kind of glazed eyes. She just kept repeating, "Don't recommend it. I don't recommend it." So
Yeah, and depending on what state you're in, Scott, that could have been kind of dangerous too.
Yeah.
I mean, if this pediatrician wanted to push things, they could have reported you for, possibly child abuse in some sort of way.
who knows?
Yeah.
Do you still have the same? Did you keep the pediatrician?
No,
The same one?
we have moved on.
Oh, you
Okay.
moved on. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. I think there are pediatricians and doctors out there that are recognizing the value of, food and nutrition. It's just sometimes it's hard to find them, but they're out there. So
Mhm.
good that you found one that's working
Yeah.
for you.
But they're only as good as the education that they get. I mean, when they're going through medical school, they might get a 3-week rotation on any kind of, specialty, pediatrics, orthopedics, whatever the case is. And then it's not until they, go off to residency when they actually will focus in on something more in depth. But nutrition is not at the top of the threshold
Mhm.
for any of these specialties at all.
Yeah.
Usually takes many years of practical experience before a doctor comes along and says, what I learned in medical school just is kind of a bunch of BS.
Yeah. And I will say, now that I'm a parent of 3, but even back then, sometimes when I hear responses like that from that pediatrician or from whoever, I know that there's a big disconnect because when I'm making formula and I'm taking the raw ingredients as an example for formula, I take the raw ingredients and I'm putting it in a blender and I'm mixing it and I taste it and it tastes good. And I know it's got all of the different health, spectrum that a baby needs, which is all documented out there, and you check all the boxes and you give it to your child and they're thriving. If someone says that that's not good, then that means that there's just a disconnect. They've never done that before.
Right.
They're not comfortable doing it themselves, right? And they're outsourcing that knowledge or just the act of doing it to someone else. And so anyone who challenges me that, I said, well, why don't you try yourself? Try making the food for your kid and watch and see and have that interaction. And that's really powerful. That's why it was powerful for me. And I think when people don't experience that, that's why they say those things, right? They don't know.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, you're making a conscious effort when you're creating the food, you're putting it together, you're mixing it up, you're preparing it with love, and it does make a difference. And you're right, the children seeing you do that, it's so much more than, dad or mom or dad going over and scooping out some powder stuff and throwing it and shaking it up in a bottle.
Or
I mean,
putting it in
that's
the microwave.
or putting it in the microwave. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and not everybody is no, not everybody has courage when it comes to that, but I wish that they did. Because as you discovered yourself, you create this and look what you did in 24 hours for your child. And if people just kind of went outside their comfort zone and tried some of these things that would empower them to maybe go further with it, like you have, with all of your knowledge. what else do you want to share with us?
Yeah.
You've got so much information in there. I can't wait.
Yeah.
Well,
So
he
that
was
means
going to discuss the 11 principles, right? Yeah,
right. So
we
it's
got, yeah,
a good segue into that, right? So lo and behold, I feel like I'm the only person in the world with this baby formula knowledge, right? Because everyone I ask, they say I'm crazy. So I'm like, okay. So like I said, lo and behold, I start looking online and boom, there's this website called or a foundation called the Weston A Price Foundation. And there are thousands and millions of people who also believe in a more holistic approach to food and nutrition, and baby formula being one of the top ones that they have helped other people, helped other families, you know, come to earth on, how to feed kids. And so I wasn't alone. And then there was more people, and then there's a community, and then there's this Weston A Price Foundation, and then there's these conferences that happen every year where people come together and talk about their stories with their kids and nutrition, and people who travel around the world, about how people eat. And it's more than you would think, like anything. Like when you first hear Bitcoin and you realize there's a huge community. Same thing with the food. And it's just really small because it is so vastly different way to prepare and eat food than most people were grown up with, myself included. I tell myself, if I were to ask myself 3 years ago, or tell myself 3 years ago what I'm doing, I would think I'm crazy. Right? What are you talking about? So yes, we can go through the 11 principles. So the Dr. Price was a dentist back in the 50s, 40s, and traveled the world to indigenous tribes and recorded who had perfect teeth and who didn't, and what was their diet. That was his mission. That was his life's work. And it was his ability to go outside of the standard Western food system and see how other tribes and indigenous people eat, to see a difference. Because every study he did within the US or within Europe was already tainted, because everyone was already consuming seed oils at that point, for example, or everyone was smoking or exposed to smoke back then, right? So he couldn't get a right sample size to compare health. And so when he went to these indigenous tribes and recorded, all right, yep, these people after one generation eating the Western diet, crooked teeth, tooth decay, stuff like that, right? And he found the tribes and the people that had perfect teeth, round, wide jaws, big spacious teeth, found out what they were eating, and that there was a commonality between all of these tribes all over the world. The foods were different, but there were some commonalities on how they prepare food, that was a clear indication that there's something there to strong health. And so Dr. Price has passed away long ago, but this foundation has persisted, and they came out with these 11 principles based on that work, to say, here's what you should avoid kind of in today's world to really help improve your diet. So I'm going to go over those now, but before I do, anything else to add?
I think that's great. There's another dentist who, his name's Dr. Kevin Stock, and he's been making his way around the YouTube space and TikTok and all of that. And he is talking about the same things you are. Because his interest is, why do people have sleep apnea? Why do people develop cavities, and why do some people don't? And he's come to the same conclusions that seed oils, it's eating foods that will develop the jawline, strong teeth, very similar stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But he's gone about it a different way, but have come up with pretty much the same conclusion, which is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's great.
It's like you need to chew to develop your jaw.
Which does make sense, actually.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
There's one of the common phrases in the Weston A Price groups are, you want high nutritious food All right. And you probably have heard you can overeat, be undernourished. Right.
Right.
That's kind of what happens in the Western diet, right? You keep eating because you're never full, because you're undernourished.
Right.
And so,
Yeah, and then you eat so much you blow it up, and then about an hour or two later, you're starving again.
right, because your body and the natural body response is trying to get something specific it needs, right? Some minerals, some vitamins, some protein, something that it's like I'm deficient in. I need to keep eating to find it, right? And that's what they do. That's what the body does anyway. So, all right, let me share my screen.
Yeah, I would love to go to one of these conferences sometime with you.
Yeah. Oh, so I've only gone to two. Last year was my first one I went to. Yeah. So quick note on that, Melissa. So every year they have a conference, and it's at the end of October / beginning of November. And I went 2 years ago, and it was in Knoxville, and I'm in Tennessee, in Nashville, so it was just down the way, a couple hours, and it was amazing. I mean, the people that are there, the stories people share, you learn a lot. The food that they prepare is the highlight by far of the conference, and so if anyone on this podcast wants to go next year, I'm going to be going. I'm going to probably be bringing my whole family, all 5 of us. I think it's in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Ooh. And yeah, we'll love to chat any more about that too.
Yeah,
listeners wants more. Okay, so the 11 principles. Scroll down here, scroll back to the top here. We'll just kind of go through them and we can talk about them. The first one here: avoid all refined and denatured foods. So this pretty much means 90% of food in grocery stores you should avoid. And you know how earlier I was saying the hardest hurdle to jump is to change the way you shop and food and eat and buy food, and that's because you can't do it in the grocery stores, and you have to order online and find local farmers and stuff. And so this is the biggest one and the biggest change I had to make in my diet, because this is the most convenient. Refined, denatured foods is the most convenient.
Isn't that the old principle where they say just avoid the center of the grocery store?
Right.
I was just going to
Only
say
buy things from the outside,
Right.
the outside aisles only, which is, I mean, it's like so true.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And even now, really, it's the outside section is.
I know, right?
Subject. But yeah,
they're junk in there, aren't they?
Right. And this means so one thing I want to point out about this first bullet here is that the food industry has gotten pretty clever on refined foods, but making them look healthy.
Right.
But you can't put lipstick on a pig, and they try. So things like veggie sticks, right? Or cauliflower crisps, right? Or puffs.
What about the pea ones, the snap pea?
Right. I'm eating vegetables, right? Or veggie puffs.
After you eat them, your hands are like all greasy, but you're like, but they're only peas.
Right. And as a parent, and you have hungry kids, especially if they're in this diet, they're hungry all the time. Mm-hmm. You kind of get thrown into this. I need to give them something, but I want to give them the best I can, right? And so you kind of look in the aisles, and you kind of have this natural, like, all right, well, yeah, Lay's potato chips aren't good, but hey, these veggie sticks, I mean, seem to be much better. And the answer is they're not. Right? They're the exact same. They're probably even worse, because those, for example, those veggie bites and stuff, they have so many synthetic ingredients that are bad for the body to make it green, to make it pea flavored, pea starches and proteins that, and solids, and, those are the ingredients in those things. Right. And it's the same thing. So don't be fooled, especially with puffs. It's like anything. So denatured. So anything that's puffed. So like rice puffs, rice cakes, those, cheese puffs, the lesser evil brand. I mean, It's the same thing. There's literally no nutritional value in those foods.
You'd be better off eating a bag of potato chips. Is that what you're
I
telling
mean,
me?
if
Kind of.
if you can find some potato chips that are cooked in peanut oil,
Yeah.
sure,
Yeah.
absolutely, right? Or even, I mean, avocado oil is pretty, but that's better than canola oil or
Oh,
sunflower
yeah.
oil or soybean oil, right?
Right.
I think most of the Lay's brands are now
What about
soybean.
olive oil?
Yeah, olive oil. I mean, look, it's better than canola, but it's probably rancid oil anyway, so it's kind of all the
Right.
same.
Yeah, you don't want it. Yeah.
Right, you don't want it. But
So you're
my
telling me I can't eat no more
right.
chips.
So if you were to pick one, do you like
Yeah.
pork rinds?
Yep.
Oh,
Why? Because they're fried in lard.
That's right.
And
And they're
lard doesn't
good.
really go bad. There's really no bad lard.
Right.
So
you could make your own potato chips with lard, though, couldn't you?
yeah, or French fries. That's
Yeah, there you go.
French fries, cooking your own French fries in lard is very easy. My kids love them. But anyway, maybe we can get to food stories at the end. We'll keep
Yes, I
sticking.
would love that.
Yes.
Tell me what I can eat.
Yes, yes. Let's make sure we do that right after the
Love it.
first thing we do. So denatured food. I just wanted to point out, like anything puffed, all cereals, no exception. Zero, right? And that's hard for people to hear too. Especially
I've heard that the cereal is actually really poisonous. There's
yeah,
a lot of poison, grossness in the cereals.
yeah.
And they
And
tell you that they're fortified with vitamins and all that kind of stuff. Right.
You
Yeah.
know, what I'm going to say is not to offend anybody, but it seems to me, from my experience, the vegan is the most difficult person to try to convey this information to,
Yeah.
because even though you have what you have up here are more or less the common fast food items, but there are many vegan type of convenience foods that are denatured, and they might have an organic label on them, which is just it's not making it any healthier.
Right.
It just, maybe some of the ingredients are non-GMO or whatever, but really it's the processing of the food, which is really the biggest part of the problem.
Right. Right. Yeah. So yeah, anyway, like I said, I can't emphasize enough, no cereals, no exception. That's it's a hard one, but just don't, I mean, for example, maybe, a couple times a year when my kids go over to a friend's house for a sleepover and they have cereal in the morning. Sure. That's 4 or 5 times a year, right? That's the exception. So, yeah, I'm trying to think. There's one other thing about denatured foods I wanted to add. I'll come back to me. Yes. So center of the grocery store.
Right? Is that salad dressing that I see on there?
This is probably hot sauce, I think. But
it's
yeah.
hot. Oh, hot sauce is bad too, huh?
I
guess I didn't really realize that, but that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, you can, not all hot sauces, but yeah, I mean, they're produced at such a high temperature, high pressure that it's essentially denatured, So is it quote unquote like bad for you and like, Roundup sprayed Cheerios? No, but it's not giving you any nutrition, right? It's just extra work your body has to do to get rid of it once you eat it.
Can you just maybe I don't understand what denatured means.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't truly know the definition of denatured. I kind of feel silly, but I'm thinking about it. I'm like, maybe that would be helpful.
Sure.
So how would you describe that?
Yeah. How I would describe denatured is something, a food that's produced at such a high heat or high pressure that any nutritional value is gone. Right. So there's a difference between calories and nutrition value. And so, yeah, there could be calories in these things. There are sugar and there are carbohydrates, but there's no nutrition. It's dead. It's essentially dead food. It's dead protein that you're eating. It's denatured. It's the protein structures are just obliterated. They're not intact. They're there. They're split. Think of like a protein chain or, molecule chain, right? They're all just severed and split, but they're there, but they're not natured in any way. They're not organized, structured. That's not real food. That's what kind of denatured means.
Oh, I love it.
Like,
thank you for explaining that.
And so like, like rice cereal or like puffs, for example, right? They're like a rice grain, but then it's like soaked and heated and then like
Right.
radiated, so it blows up, right? And makes it that puffy texture, right? But it's, I mean, there's nothing to it. It's essentially microwaved food at, for if you microwave something for like an hour, that's what it would be like. It's denatured. Does that answer the question?
Yes,
Yeah.
it does. Thank you.
Okay, enough about that. Include animal foods. So Christy talked about vegan, right? Animal foods are so crucial.
Yes.
And all of them, right? Steak, fish. I mean, as you see in the picture here, just include animal foods as part of your diet, and obviously try to get the best sourced animal foods. If you can find farmers and people that what they feed their animals, right? But yeah, include animal foods the most you can. Essentially, this point is against veganism, right? Veganism is that's not a sustainable diet for any species. Someone can do it probably for 30, maybe 40 years, but after 1 or 2 generations, they won't be able to produce kids, for example.
Right.
Because you just don't have the nutrition to reproduce. Anyway, include animal foods. Questions on that? Cheese, shrimp, milk.
It just
Seems like the basic foods,
animals, right? Like the
ancestral foods,
right?
Mm-hmm.
Traditional foods.
Yeah. All right, next one. Emphasize nutrients-dense foods. So organ meats, animal fats, eggs, raw dairy, shellfish, fish liver oils, and fish eggs. These have to be included in your diet. Now, do you need to have this every day? No. But a lot of people don't have any of this ever, sometimes in their life, right? Especially in this day and age, you could probably go your whole life, especially people who are allergic to cheese, for example, or shellfish, and then just don't eat eggs. I mean, you could get none of the vitamins and nutrient dense food nutrients from these foods in your whole life. And 1 or 2 generations of people not eating these foods, you see chronic illness, chronic disease, loss of eyesight when you're born, poor eyesight, chronic inflammation, any sort of anything labeled genetic is usually due to a mineral or vitamin deficiency during pregnancy, right? And so that's why eating these foods often, once a week, a couple times a month, is so crucial because it gives those vital nutrients. And so one of Dr. Price's studies that he did is he looked at lions in the wild versus in captivity, for example. And he noticed that sometimes lions would kill an elk and then open up the elk, bite it, but not eat it, and only go for the liver during mating season. Because the lion knew eating the liver gave him the best chance to reproduce.
Can you stop sharing your screen and can we go into this subject a little bit deeper? I'm just not sure if people are just seeing the shared screen or if they're seeing us at all, but I wanted you to go in a little bit more about the whole organ eating. And I remembered having a conversation with you about it before and how important it was and how many times you should be doing it and all of that sort of thing. And so if you could expand on that section, that would be fantastic.
Sure. Yeah. So like I said, I just gave the example of how there's animal intuition on organs, right? To eat organs like liver in particular. But even other organs, there's there's Dr. Price kind of labeled 3 vitamins as kind of the X factor on health and reproduction. And that's vitamin K, vitamin A, and vitamin D. And so if you could have those 3 things in combination, in balance, in your diet, then you're more likely to have wide jaws, strong teeth, be able to reproduce easily, things like that. And organ meats have those things in balance, by far, right? You can't really get that anywhere else. And if you overdose on one of those vitamins, it'll typically, your body will use one of the other ones to counteract itself. So like, for example, vitamin D. So if you overdose on vitamin D, and I'm talking 10,000 BTUs a day, every day, your body's going to start utilizing all this vitamin A because it's this unnatural amount for the body to have. And you're going to be super deficient in vitamin A. And what's one reason that's bad? Well, there's been studies in pigs where if you're deficient in vitamin A 6 months before pregnancy, during pregnancy, and afterwards, you lose eyesight. So pigs will be born blind. Wow. And so that's just one example of how those three, you need to have those three things in balance. One more thing about, so organ meat. So the pig study is a great study. So they took the same mom and deprived her of vitamin A, had a litter, half the litter had eyesight, and the other half had like almost poor to no eyesight. Then the second time they deprived the mother again of vitamin A. So essentially kind of like another generation. That litter had 25% of the pigs born without eyes.
Oh, geez.
Wow.
Right. So like, wow, just didn't have them. Right. So is that genetic or is that nutritional based? Right.
Yeah.
Then they took that same mom, gave her vitamin A, the third litter, and all pigs had eyes. Most of them had good eyesight. Some of them didn't. By the fourth litter with a strong vitamin A, all of them had eyesight. So is it genetic from that mom pig? No.
Very interesting, Scott, that you're bringing this up because, when we think about evolution and how we evolve or adapt, I can't remember what Ryan calls it, adaptation, right?
Mm-hmm.
But man, you're bringing up something that's very important. I mean, there's a scientific experiment that's been done with the vitamins being withheld, and the eyes and all of that. If nobody tested that out, they just would think, these pigs are being born without eyes now, right? Or whatever.
Right.
That's my mind.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and please don't quote me on the exact study and those numbers.
No,
I can't remember exactly.
Somebody will find it, I'm sure.
But that just shows how the organ meats are so important, and how that probably does translate to humans too. I mean, for example, I was born poor eyesight. I had -11 in both of my eyes by the time I was like, I don't know, 8 years old. So needed glasses whole life, contacts whole life. I got LASIK, and I wonder, is that because, to no fault of anybody, right? But I wonder if that's because, there was a lack of vitamin A in my diet or my parents' diet or what, right? Who knows? Mm-hmm. So yes, organ meats provide all those things and many more. So that's just one example of vitamin A. Vitamin K typically is a fat that comes from birds. And, like geese, or goose, or emu, has strong vitamin K. And Dr. Price, when you travel around the world, it was a clear indication. People who had high vitamin K were always way healthier than anyone else. And so, yeah, so think of some stereotypical norms, right? So think of like the French cooking, right? The French, they're always very rich food, right? Well, kind of, if you look into some of the French history of what they cook, liver pate is a staple, right? Liver pate is a staple in the French for everything, once a week, every week. And so also, like, maybe your grandmother or great grandmother would say, oh yeah, we used to have liver once a week. Liver and onions, right?
My grandparents did. My mom used to make it every now and again, but man, I couldn't bring myself to eat it. But now I'm thinking, as an adult, perhaps I should just make myself do the right thing and eat it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and it's good. I was like you, Melissa, but I slock mine up in a bunch of butter and onions, and it's yummy.
Yeah. So those
actually, Crypto Professor is on listening, Scott, and he says, loves him some cow tongue And plus, organ meats are usually very affordable.
Right.
Yes. A great point. Usually they're discarded, right? And especially if you can get a local farmer to get, if you like do like a half cow, ask for all the organ meats, and I'm sure they'll be like, perfect. I don't have to get rid of them myself.
Right.
So yeah. Those, great grandmother, there was something to that, right? It wasn't just, fairy tale, it really meant strong generational health for kids. And some cultures still do it. But we need to bring that back. So that's why it's number 3 on the list for the Weston A Price. Any other comments about organ?
I don't think
I
so.
will say one good way to eat organ meat. Well, there's 2. First is if you find a butcher that you develop a relationship with, put it in your ground beef. Ask him to say, all right, if you're going to get 100 pounds of ground beef, say, can you take 30 pounds and mix all the organs in it? And then when you cook it up, you probably won't taste it nearly as much, especially if you put, different seasonings on it. You won't even taste it. There'll be a texture. You'll taste the texture for sure, but that's one good way to eat it.
Right.
And not know it. Put it in ground beef. And the other way is eat it frozen. So
you mentioned that. Yes, that is what I wanted to, I remember you talking about that. How do you do the frozen? Because you said something about shredding it over top of your eggs or something. You put it over your kids' eggs. And
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, that's something I probably can do. But can you just go over that real quick? Because I think that's great.
Sure. Yeah. So you can do raw frozen chicken liver.
Huh.
So and if you're doing raw, don't buy chicken liver from the grocery store. Go find a farmer who will give you a pack of chicken livers, usually all together, mashed up, and then frozen for at least 14 days in a deep freeze. You need to have it frozen for at least 14 days. That's a key point. But after that, yep, I will cut it in half. Let's say it comes like a little square pack, right? Vacuum packed. I'll cut off maybe a third or a fourth. I'll take off the plastic, so it's just frozen block of liver, and then I'll put just a paper towel on the side, like kind of wrapping around it, and then I'll leave that in the freezer. And then every time I need to have it, I'll just take it out. It's already got the the paper towel on it, and so I can grab it, and then just put over a grater, just
Okay.
and then eat it quick. Eat it within, I don't know, 5 minutes, 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Over your eggs, eat it, and the taste is way more mild than if you try to cook with it or wait for it to warm up or melt. Then it's just, you have that much stronger flavor of liver coming out. But if you eat it frozen, it's not that bad, especially over eggs. Put a lot of salt on it, you don't taste it really.
So are you saying that if you how often should you do this, and how much, and what will we notice by introducing that into our diets on a regular basis? What can we expect?
Yeah. If you're grating chicken liver, I would start off by grating a tablespoon. It's hard to measure a tablespoon while you're grating, right? So, 1 to 2 tablespoons of grated chicken liver. Start off once a week on eggs with salt. Preferably pasture raised eggs, scrambled with a little bit of cream, put that on. I mean, that's like, talk about a nutrient dense breakfast, right? If you take 2 or 3 pasture raised eggs with a little bit of raw cream, scramble them and put a little bit of chicken liver on it. Tell you what, you won't be very hungry shortly after that.
Right.
But yeah, you can eat it as much as you can take it. I mean, 1 to 2 times a week of liver would be a lot. Especially if it's good quality. What can you start to notice? Well, if you're over like 3 or 4 years old and you start eating this stuff, you probably will have a detox response right away because your body's not used to such a nutrient dense food, especially liver. So you could get a stomach ache, could have a little bit of diarrhea first couple times you eat it. Totally normal, and don't shy away from it. Most people say, see, my body didn't agree with this chicken liver or cow liver, right? And that's farthest from the truth, right? Especially
Or
when
they
you,
think, oh, I just ate something that's raw chicken livers. It's so
Mhm.
gross. And now I'm sick. And see, that's
Yeah.
probably why I can't eat it. Right.
Right, right. Um, so don't, so that totally normal, right? And then that's why I say just do a little bit once a week, because then that usually doesn't happen, right? And then as you build up to it, you'll find, I kid you not, you'll find you'll start to crave it every now and then, maybe in a month if you don't have it. If you, let's say you eat it once a week, 2 teaspoons over your eggs, do that for like 10 weeks in a row, and then you stop. I bet you after a couple weeks, you're going to be like, man, I wish I could have some of that chicken liver eggs, because your body's used to that nutrition, and then it knows biologically, hey, give me more of that.
Right.
It's amazing
Total
that
sense.
you only need a couple of teaspoons or a couple, you say teaspoons or tablespoons?
I did tablespoons, like two
Tables,
tablespoons.
a couple tablespoons. I mean, that's not that much at all to make such an impact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
And then if you do like chicken liver pate, that's a little more dense. But you take that, spread it on crackers, that's easy. Eat it with cheese. If you want to make like a pate, like a liver pate. Beef liver is a lot harder to eat. But you eat it with onions or whatever, and there's a couple ways to cook it to make it good. You don't want to cook it hot. You want to cook it extremely hot for super short, because you want it crispy on the outside and kind of warm in the middle. And if you cook it, it starts to get tough, and you don't want to do that. So there's a couple of ways to cook livers, and it's hard to get it that way. So anyway, yes. And you asked about my kids. So baby formula, chicken liver, grated chicken liver, I put it in the baby formula. Awesome. Yeah, that's part of, so at the Weston A Price, they have a website with baby formula recipes. Chicken liver's on there. Put it in there if you can.
Interesting.
And funny story, my 2-year-old, like 3 weeks ago, so I had the chicken liver in our freezer, and she sees it and she knows what it is. And I kid you not, 3 weeks ago, she pulled the baggie out and said, eat.
Oh,
Pulled the baggie and said, eat. And I go, are you sure? And she said, yes. And I said, okay. So I cut up these just thinly sliced frozen chicken livers, lots of salt, good raw, Celtic salt. And she just, I just kept giving her until she said she was done.
That's
and she had no problem.
yeah. Cool.
And I was like, super cool. Something that I didn't think would ever happen.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then since then, we've had it 2 or 3 times. I said, hey, you want some chicken liver? And sometimes she'll say no. And sometimes she'll be like, yeah.
That's cool.
Very cool.
Yeah. So did I answer your questions?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to pause you on that one because I remember that from last time.
Yeah. All right, let's share my screen again. All right, so yeah, I wonder if people can see us as well or just the screen, but okay.
Yeah,
so
those of you in the YouTube chat, if you could put in the chat and let us know if you can see Scott's face along with the screen, or if it's just the screen you're seeing, I'd appreciate it.
and it might be, each
It's
user
fine.
setting too, but
Either way.
yeah. So we'll keep going. So that's a big one. And then another comment here is fish liver oil. So fermented cod liver oil is in a lot of stores, lots of different brands, but that's really great too. I mean, that's easy, very easy to consume, and super beneficial. Okay, eat some animal foods raw. So we kind of just touched on that a little bit, and cook most plant foods. Right. So this is another common misconception, eat salads and salad dressings. And yeah, you can eat some greens raw, but eat most of them cooked. And when you cook them, eat them with some sort of animal fat or butter. So one overall theme of the Weston A Price is you want to eat things together and cook things together. Don't eat them separately, like a machine would put together a computer or something, right? These aren't just like, all right, if I have all these things on my plate and I eat them, it's good. Well, no, you have to cook them together. You have to eat them together. And same thing goes with plant foods. So like, if you're cooking carrots, saute them in butter, right? If you're, making soup, soups are so nutritious. If you cook soups, you cook vegetables in broth for an hour or two, right? And they absorb all those nutrients. Same with like most of the plants, like broccoli, soup, and things like that, right? You want to cook things together. Eat things together, cook them in butter, cook them in lard, cook them in some sort of good animal fat. And your body will absorb nutrition 10 times better than it would otherwise.
Yeah, I remember you saying not to eat those raw foods. And so one of the mistakes that I made, I thought I was being so healthy. I love spinach. And I was making myself, raw spinach drink in the morning, adding stuff to it and drinking it down. And then I eat, raw spinach salads. And, I was eating a lot of that and thinking I was really doing something good. And then realized that that might not be the best thing for me to be doing.
Right.
So yeah, why is that? Do you know? Can you tell us why we shouldn't eat raw vegetables like that, like raw spinach and whatnot?
Right. So just to make a comment, so nothing is a one-time generalization, right? So it says cook most plant foods. So eating some raw, totally fine. Eating raw spinach, time to time, great, really healthy for you, right? Cucumbers is great too. Eat raw cucumbers. Carrots are fine too sometimes, right? But we're talking about most, right? So it's not that it's bad for you. It's that when you, for example, eat raw spinach in a smoothie 7 days a week every morning for 4 years, yeah, then that can cause some pretty detrimental health effects. Spinach in particular is high in oxalates, right? So your body, if you consume that much oxalate and you're not exercising in a specific way to get rid of that, then yeah, it'll build up in your body and you'll start to have, your body will have a point of failure, right? And it's not just one spot. But that's why eating raw plants all the time is not very good.
And I like the fact that just say to cook them up with a little bit of butter because
I
butter is
know.
good.
What is not to like about
I mean,
that?
butter.
Yeah. Oysters, just some of the things on the picture here. Raw oysters, high up there, top 10 superfood. Raw pasture raised egg yolks, awesome. We don't have to talk about coffee right now, but if you're looking for a coffee alternative, so like my wife, she's breastfeeding right now, one of her favorite drinks is, since she's breastfeeding, she's not doing any caffeine. I'll take raw milk. I'll take a raw egg yolk or two, some vanilla extract, cinnamon, nutmeg, a little bit of maple syrup, use a little frother, froth it up. Boom. It's like a perfect morning powerhouse drink. And there you're getting your raw egg, you're getting your some of your animal foods raw.
So you drink it cold. She drinks it cold then?
Drink it cold, or sometimes I'll steam the milk and then I'll froth it so it's warm. Yeah.
All right. So you could drink it warm.
Yeah. But you don't want to get it too hot, because then if you get milk too hot, you can denature it.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and definitely don't microwave it because that will denature it too.
Rocky used to eat those eggs raw. I remember they were showing that. So sometimes the movies do show us good things.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, I put raw egg yolks in baby formula every now and then too, right? Especially for 6-month and olds, they can totally handle it, and it's super nutritious. So, yeah. So number 5 here, enjoy lacto-fermented condiments and beverages. So this one is more about probiotics in the gut, gut health. You need lacto-fermented, you need to consume lacto-fermented foods. Did you know the Romans, one of their staple items for when they were conquering all the Mediterranean was that it was translated to salted cabbage, which is essentially sauerkraut.
Okay.
Right. And they would have sauerkraut because they knew it. So they knew if they had bread and sauerkraut, for example, sourdough bread and sauerkraut, it was super healthy, and their soldiers could live on that and travel and conquer.
Wow.
And so it was just one little anecdote about how important lacto-fermented foods are. So pickles, right? If you can do it yourself, pickles, any sort of yogurt, right? Yogurt's lacto-fermented milk, kefir. This is sauerkraut up here. Kombucha.
Mhm.
And making your own kombucha is very easy and super cheap. So if you're looking to kick some sort of Coke, soda, pop addiction, one easy way is to go to kombucha and then make it yourself because it's a lot cheaper.
Mm.
So it's
What's in kombucha?
yeah, kombucha is a mushroom, and you put the mushroom in with some sort of tea, sugar, and then any flavor you want. So you can do like grape juice, lime juice, whatever flavor you want for the kombucha. And the special mushroom, if it sits in there, it'll ferment over a week or two, and it eats all the sugar in it and the tea, and it's a naturally fermented drink. And it's not like alcoholic, like you don't get drunk over it, but it's just fermented, and so it's just really good for you. And if you're looking for something sweet, that's one good way to, like I said, curb. And it's just fermented sugar in the good way like that is just really healthy for the gut. It revitalizes the gut. It attracts better bacteria in your gut. It gets rid of bad bacteria in your gut.
So there is a good use for sugar then.
Yes, it's so funny. Sally McFallon, she's the president of the Weston A Price Foundation, and someone asked her at the last conference, well, what about sugar and kombucha? And she goes, that's the one exception, because it's fermented. So it's no longer processed refined sugar once you drink it.
Yeah.
So it's essentially not biologically, it's as the biology of it has transformed. It's been structured, nutrition, fermented, by nature. So anyway.
Very cool.
Even Dr. Berg talks about that. The sugar in kombucha is not going to be an issue if you're on a ketogenic diet, for instance.
Right. Yeah, a good point.
Yeah.
How are we doing on time?
Doing pretty good.
Yeah, we're doing good.
All right. Perfect. Number 6. This is a big one. Prepare seeds, grains, and nuts properly to minimize anti-nutrients and enhance digestibility. So this, I would say, along with number 1, is probably the biggest health deters of society today, because most seeds, wheat, doesn't go through this process, and it's in everything we eat.
Right.
So what do I mean by properly prepared grains, or what do they mean by properly prepared grains? It means it's soaked and it's fermented, transformed, easily digestible to humans. Right. So the best example is sourdough bread. What's the difference between regular bread, sourdough bread, yeast bread, and a sourdough bread? Is that sourdough bread, as you can see in the little picture here, you have a culture, you have a fermented, bubbly, gross culture thing that smells sour, right? And when you put that with bread making, and the bread rises due to the bacteria and the yeast that's in this culture, it breaks down the bread and the grain so that your body can break down the bread and utilize all the nutrition in the bread. I can't tell you how many stories I've heard of people that have been diagnosed as celiac, but they come across a good sourdough bread and they can eat it just fine.
Right.
So tell me that. Go to a doctor and say, well, how can you be celiac, but then eat this sourdough bread?
Right.
Why is that the case? Well, it's because when our body gets overwhelmed with seeds and grains that are essentially denatured, our gut becomes in the inability to digest it anymore because it's too hard, right? Or there's just no longer any bacteria in our gut to process those grains. And so
is that what causes the bloating? terrible bloating from
I'm
it?
sure it causes terrible bloating. Yeah. Um, and it's funny. It's not something you will see right away. It's not like you'll eat, um, a regular loaf of bread from, white loaf of bread from the store, and then you're sick, right? This number 6, this is like a longevity type of cause and effect, right? This materializes in things like, inflammation, chronic inflammation. Can't eat wheat anymore, or your body can't process other things anymore, or pain, arthritis, all these things. That's what this in short, lifespan, general lifespan, right? That's what this causes. So it's not like a direct
You know
cause
what
and
the
effect.
doctor told me though, because they say they blame it always blame it on dairy.
Mhm.
They always blame it, and they tell me that I have to cut out all dairy completely, all dairy. And
Mhm.
I, after talking with you that day, I think it's this. This
Mhm.
makes sense, and just how you said it sneaks up on you, because I used to be able to eat these things just fine, and now I notice, like, if I go for days without, like many days, I'm trying to not eat those kinds of breads and things like that. When I get done, I'm not eating it, and then I start to eat it, or I have pizza, or I eat corn chips, or whatever the heck, I pay for it. My
Mhm.
stomach instantly bloating, my body is achy, and I made that correlation. So how do we, if we do want to eat these types of things, how do we prepare them
Right.
ourselves? What's the
Yes.
best way?
It's a great question. So one thing I want to add and why we need to soak and prepare our grains. So here's an example. So think of, a wheat, so like you have a wheat berry, or think of like an almond think of like a nut is more easier to think about, but it's the same concept. So you have like an almond, falls from a tree, and it can sit on the ground for how long? 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
Right.
And then a little bit of water, a little bit of moisture, a little bit of sun, and then it'll sprout,
Right.
right? It's not dead on the ground for 5 years. Well, how does that survive on the ground for 5 years, not attached to a tree? Like, where is it getting its nutrition? Well, it's not getting nutrition anywhere, but there's an enzyme that's coated in the seed to protect from any animal, typically from eating it. It's called phytic acid, and it's this enzyme that prohibits growth and prohibits growth on the outside of it, like mold and things like that, until it gets moisture and the right conditions to grow. And once you give it water and it starts to grow and it sprouts or it germinates, then the whole seed changes, right? It's now growing. So if you were to eat an almond that hasn't been sprouted versus an almond that has been sprouted, it has a huge effect on your gut and how you can process it. You can process the sprouted almond much, 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 much better than the unsprouted one because of this phytic acid that's encased in it. And that's in all grains. And so you might say, well, how come, people weren't soaking their grains way back then? And one great example is, well, yeah, back then grain, so let's say pre 150 years ago, most grain was stored in a grain elevator outside. Well, there was always moisture, a little bit of moisture in a lot of the grain elevators. Or when it was transported from grain elevator to a bakery, then it was ground into flour, usually right before it was made into bread. It was already in a semi state of sprouting because there was moisture just in, because, they were just rickety old, grain silos, right?
Right.
But now we can harvest the wheat instantly and grind it up instantly when it's still in that non-germinated state. And so
Mm.
I think that's what gets our gut over time. That's what sneaks up on you, like you were saying, Melissa. So you say, well, so then that's why you sprout things, or why you ferment it, like with sourdough. So sourdough process, if you use wheat and you have the sourdough process, it eats away all that phytic acid when that sourdough's bubbling in the wheat. Or if you soak grains overnight, like oatmeal, for example. If you soak oatmeal in warm water and a little bit of an acidic medium, like apple cider vinegar or actual liquid whey protein from milk or yogurt or kefir, you soak something in something acidic overnight, it breaks down all that phytic acid in the grain. So then when you cook it, your body can digest it super easy,
Right.
and it's nutritious and it's healthier and you don't have gut issues and it tastes better.
Question then. So that was the other mistake that I was making and thought I was doing so good with making oatmeal, thinking I'm eating, nutritious. So I make myself oatmeal and make myself the raw spinach shakes and whatnot.
Yeah.
What if so if you're not, I'm getting the idea here that we really needs to make our own food, right? Make our own bread and whatnot. But if we can't, and somebody is going to buy bread, it sounds like they want to buy sourdough bread at minimum, right?
Yeah.
I mean, at the bare minimum, don't eat a bunch of it, but buying the sourdough bread and then, like you're saying, is making it yourself. Soaking these things.
Right. But so outside of that, maybe let's take some more common foods, right? So like rice. Rice is a great one. Rice should be soaked overnight in warm water and a little bit of, get kefir or yogurt, or kefir, yogurt, yeah, or liquid whey or apple cider vinegar, and just a tablespoon, right? So like just put it in some warm water, tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, 2 cups of oatmeal, 2 cups of warm water, a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, let it sit overnight. And the difference between doing that versus eating it and then, letting it soak overnight and then cook it the next morning, the difference between that versus just cooking it right away is enormous in terms of health benefits. And eating not cooked any grain is the worst. So think of like granola bars, right? Oatmeal granola bars. It's another lipstick on a pig scenario. And so that's what this is. So, if you can soak your rice, soak your wheat, like pancakes is a great example. So like if you want to make your own pancakes, you can buy regular flour from the store, right? Get organic flour if you can, all-purpose flour. And what we do is we'll take buttermilk. That's an acidic lacto-fermented drink. But you take buttermilk, buy it from the store. And so I'll take so it's like two scoops of flour, do 2 cups of buttermilk. So 2 cups of flour, 2 cups of buttermilk. Stir it up. So then it's like this batter paste. Let that sit overnight on your countertop with a towel over it. And then the next morning, it's sitting out all night. It's not in the refrigerator. Careful.
Yeah, I know. I was just going to ask
Scary.
that question. I was going to say, I don't know. It's not in the fridge.
Yeah, I don't know. Who knows? And then add your normal pancake ingredients. So add 2 eggs, some sugar or maple syrup. Maple syrup is what we do. Maple syrup, eggs, a little bit of vanilla extract, a little bit of baking soda, butter. Stir it up, and then you got pancakes. And that, especially for kids, very nutritious. Very, very nutritious. The wheat is broken down. The buttermilk has broken down all of that phytic acid and all of that wheat, and it makes it a lot easier for the body to digest.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah. Same thing with like lentils, rice, any like buckwheat we do. Oatmeal is a big one. So we'll do oatmeal in the morning, but we soak it the night before. We do it in kefir, like milk kefir, because it gives a little more like a creamy texture. It's really nice.
Yeah, you could probably, rice with kefir probably would not be bad. Or I'm just,
a little more
I'm thinking
risotto.
it's probably not that bad. What about, well, you're probably going to say the same thing. The like my sister makes falafel all the time. Like, she buys it in the kit or whatever, but she could probably soak falafel overnight.
Yeah, so those are the chickpeas. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So falafel is usually chickpeas, right? And plus other stuff fried. But yeah, so the chickpea, you could definitely need to soak the chickpea or sprout. Yeah, sprout the chickpea. Same thing goes for nuts. Another lipstick on a pig type thing. Oh, I'm eating all these nuts. I'm being healthy. It's like, if they're not sprouted or, baked, essentially sprouted and baked, I mean, it's the same thing. It's just really hard on your gut. And no, if you eat some almonds, are you going to the hospital the next week? No. But it's like you said, it's this, well, after like 10 years, I used to eat nuts all the time and now I can't. Why is that? It's because of this. It's because of number 6.
Same thing. I mean, I was doing everything wrong. I was eating nuts, the almonds, and I got to where I'm like, am I allergic to almonds? Like, I don't feel right when I'm eating them. They upset my stomach. I've completely stopped eating almonds now.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering it's because they weren't sprouted or whatever, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
We'll go through the next couple here. So number 7, enjoy saturated fats. And then, like we talked about earlier at the beginning, avoid industrial seed oils. This one is hard, especially as a parent. This one is very hard.
Oh, it's in everything.
And you can't really get away with this unless you really cook yourself for almost everything, because it's in everything. It's in everything. So it's even in baby formula. Like you can't get out. You can't get rid of it, right? So
they're in those pouches too. The ones the kids always have.
Yeah.
Can you give an example of an industrial seed oil just for people that might not know?
Canola oil.
Right.
Big one.
Rapeseed oil.
Yeah, rapeseed oil, palm oil, palm kernel oil, sunflower oil.
Right.
Safflower oil, soybean oil. It's a big one. Peanut oil to
my joints are hurting just hearing that.
Yeah. And then this other one, saturated fats. For the longest time, we've been told stay away from saturated fats, clogs arteries, causes heart disease, and this could be farther from the truth. There's a caveat here. You have to enjoy saturated fats from good sources, right? So, good raw butter, or, organic butter, good coconut oil, good pastured lard from, bacon. This is bacon fat. So, so lard, tallow, bacon fat from good sources. There is a difference than eating traditional farm raised fat off of a New York strip and saying, look, I'm eating all this saturated fat from a conventional New York strip. No, you don't want to be just wolfing that down, right? That is like everything. There's truth and wisdom in some of the deceit. So, yes, eat good saturated fats, right? Good pastured lard, pastured tallow. Order from a half cow. If you get some lard from one cow that you have, that you've purchased or butchered, yes, use that. Cook with it a little bit. Cook with it on your vegetables. That's what that means. Saturated fats. That's not no diss to any grocery store, but that's not the Kroger, chunk of New York strip fat that you want to be eating and say, hey, look, I'm eating all the saturated fat. That will probably cause you some health effects. So
that looks like some Kerrygold butter there.
Maybe. Yeah.
I want to welcome of listeners that came in on X Spaces. We have Rosemary and Kathleen, and Kita has joined. Welcome, ladies. Please let us know if you have any questions. And Scott's doing a great job here presenting. Thank you.
All right. So number 8, consume animal foods from land and sea, right? So very important to have both a healthy balance. Nothing really enough said there, but you want to have both.
Right.
Use unrefined salt liberally, right? So good Celtic salt, redfin salt. I said salt. Yeah, Celtic sea salt. Anything that's unrefined.
Redfin salt. What is that?
It's just another good brand of salt. Yeah. Baja salt's another brand. Where these are salts that are coming from salt flats, right? Dehydrated ocean water, right? So there's minerals in the salt, essentially, is what you want. And it's not denatured, right? So unrefined. If you have refined table white salt, it's essentially denatured. It's sure, it's what's it, NaCl? Is that salt?
Right.
Yeah, it's still the right molecule, but it's not living. It's not real. It's not salt water dehydrated with all of the great minerals in it intact, and you eat it, right? That's good salt, and you can't really get enough of it. Yes, you definitely don't want refined salt liberally. You want unrefined salt liberally.
Yeah, I just read something recently. It said that you should go to the white sea salt, because they're finding that the like the pink Himalayan salt and so forth has too much iron in it.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's what I use, actually. There's another thing Melissa's doing. I got the pink salt.
Well, yeah,
Right.
I always thought
Trying,
Himalayan
people, I'm
pink
trying.
salt was good, but I was just reading recently and said no, just because of the amount of iron that's in there, and there's something else too that is given the color to the salt. And so if you can avoid what's given the color to it, then it's going to be better for you.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Number 10, include gelatinous bone broths and soups, stews, gravies, gravy and sauces.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, bone broth, make your own.
Yeah.
That's a tough feat. Or you can buy some, but just know it's processed, right? And you necessarily don't know how hot did you heat the bone broth, how long has it been sitting there? And yeah, you can read the ingredients, but what else
And
was
it's
done
expensive too.
and it's expensive. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the best bones to make broth out of, and how long do you cook it?
Yeah.
I mean,
For chicken broth, you want to use chicken feet. So you can do like if you want to do chicken broth, you do like a whole chicken carcass, maybe
Right.
1 or 2 chicken carcasses, depending on how big your crock pot is. Crock pot's a really easy way to do it. Let's say you put 1 chicken carcass in, and then you put an additional 4 to 6 feet in there. Chicken feet.
how do you get the feet?
Usually from a butcher.
Go
Farmer,
ask the
butcher.
Yeah.
Chicken feet. Yep. And then you put in a bunch of filtered water. You put a little bit of apple cider vinegar. You need the acidic medium to break down the bones. You can put in some veggies, carrots, celery, some common ones, carrots, celery, cabbage, onion, and simmer it for 12 hours on low. Strain it, fill it with water, put some apple cider vinegar in it again. Another 12 hours, you get 2 batches out of it, strain it again, and then that's how you would make chicken broth.
You know what I do with mine? I have an Instapot, so I throw my bones in there, apple cider vinegar, filtered water, cook it. 4 hours later, it's ready.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. That's a more economical way to do it too.
It's fast, and I can always tell if I'm able to get the marrow out of the bones. They should just be able to drop right out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I used to slow cook them for 24 hours or so, just until the marrow would come out.
Yeah.
But Instacooker, much better.
Yeah, and this is also absent in most diet,
Right.
in kind of the Western diet, like an actual bone broth, like gelatin bone broth. If you can really think about it, when do I have bone broth?
Well,
And what is the gelatin? I know I sound stupid, but what is gelatinous? What is that?
Yeah.
What is that? I don't know, to be
Yeah.
honest with you.
Yeah. So gelatinous bone broth. So
Gelatinous, sorry about that.
yeah. So, but it is what it's so Jello, right? So when you cook the bone broth, so we talked about putting 2 chicken carcasses in and a bunch of chicken feet. So when you stew that with some apple cider vinegar, all of the good protein from the bones, and then so for chickens, chicken feet has a lot of gelatinous tissue. And so when you steep it for 12 hours, all of that great all that great protein that's in that will come out, and it's in the liquid. And then when it cools, it becomes gelatinous, like Jello.
Oh.
And so chicken, like a good bone broth in the fridge is in a state of Jello. I don't know if that's like a a form of liquid. It's not liquid, but it's not solid, it's jello, right? And that's how you know it's really good. So because if it turns into jello, then you have all those amazing protein that you're and collagen that your body can utilize and digest.
Don't throw
So
that
you
stuff
take
out
it-
either.
Yeah, so you just take the jello, and then use parts of that to then add to like make a soup and add extra water and whatnot. Is that how
Yeah.
you do it? Because
Yeah,
I
exactly.
probably would have been one that once I saw it turn gelatinous,
Yeah.
I would have scooped that off the top thinking it was bad.
A lot of
Right.
people will.
I had no idea that is what I needed to keep.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
wow.
So you put in a crock pot. So if you do Chrissy's method, do Instapot, 4 hours, done. It's still hot and liquid. So you strain it, put it in the fridge for probably overnight, and then it'll get gelatinous. And then what I do is, it depends how much you cook, right? So if you cook like 12 quarts or something, then I would remove it from the jar or from the crock pot, and I put it in paper cups, like 8-ounce or 12-ounce paper cups, and then put them in the freezer. So you maybe spend a night or 2 days making your bone broth. It's a good amount of work, but then you can save them in usable sizes, right? So it's gelatinous. It's really easy to put it in paper cups, like paper food cups with the top, and then put them in the freezer. So then if you want a cup of bone broth in the morning, which is great, or put a cup of bone broth with your soaked rice and you cook it in bone broth instead of water. Talk about some nutritious foods. It's easy. You just pop it out of the freezer, put it, you can put it in with the rice frozen and it'll cook or whatever, right?
Very cool. I love that idea.
Yeah.
I just take mine out of the jar and put it in a cup, warm it up, drink it.
Yep.
I get all of I don't strain mine.
Yeah.
It's all good. I just don't like the bone fragments are not good. So, I do get rid of those.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, if it's marrow and all that, why not?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Lots of salt and pepper too. Tastes really good.
Lots of salt and pepper. And then number 11 here is emphasize nutrient dense foods before and during pregnancy and for growing babies. So this one, the reason why this is on here as number 11 is because there's a big scare tactic to moms, especially first-time moms, of what to eat and what not to eat during pregnancy, pre-pregnancy, during pregnancy, and beginning of childbirth. And you just need nutrient-dense foods.
Right.
So what do they mean here? They mean egg yolks, not egg whites, liver, bone broth, vitamin K. So, goose fat, emu oil, cod liver oil. Those are all what moms need to be eating, or, to-be moms, pregnant moms need to be eating. And for breast milk, if you're breastfeeding, you got to have those. You have to have those for a healthy, happy baby.
Right.
Otherwise, you'll get a cranky, colicky baby.
Wow.
So, all right. One other thing I wanted to add here.
One thing I wanted to say.
Go ahead.
Did I miss fruit anywhere on that?
Nope. Fruit's great.
Huh?
Fruit's great. Not necessarily one of the principles.
Yeah, that's what
But
I'm just saying. I'm noticing it wasn't one of the principles.
Yeah, all fruit is great. Sugar is great for the body. Fruit is great for the body always. Yeah, true. Right. It's now you could get into where you get your fruit and what's sprayed on your fruit. Of course, you have to be kind of watch out from that. But yeah, if you have like your own raspberry bushes or blueberry bushes in your yard, or sometimes people do apple trees, and you're not spraying it and you're just letting it grow, you can't have enough.
Eat up.
Right. I was just going to say, so one other thing, if anyone's looking to get started, and all the stuff that I talked about, where I started was a cookbook called Nourishing Traditions. Just look it up here. I'm sure it's on the Amazon. Yeah, right here. Is my screen sharing?
Mm-hmm. I can see it.
So it's this yellow book here, Nourishing Traditions. It's by Sally McFallon Farrell. She's the president of the Weston A Price Foundation, and she wrote this book 30 years ago now, probably.
Wow.
And it is great. I would get it, read it. It is super overwhelming to start. Pick a few things, try it. Reach out to Melissa, Christy, or myself, or so they can put you in contact with me. And the community is what makes it easy. So get the
I'll
book,
tell you what,
start reading it.
that Weston A Price website
It's
that
fantastic.
I was searching it out last night and the day before. They have a wealth of information on there. I mean, right down to the 11 principles, but they've got recipes on there. They've got articles on different things. They've got it's just so many things, so many different topics. They have podcasts, and I was like,
Facebook group, I think, too. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just wonderful. And then like you said, you've gone to their conferences, and I would love to go to a conference, get a group of us to go. I wanted to go this last year, and but I wasn't able to do it. But man, I just think it's so awesome. How these guys have just they continue on with the traditional food, and you've got it down. I mean, you're doing it, which is pretty awesome.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so anyone listening right now, please chime in. What do you want to know out of the 11 principles, the cookbook, or anything specific? Any other general question? I mean, we kind of went through a lot, but I've honed in on, for example, where I order my food. And believe it or not, you can order a lot of great food online. You don't need to go to the grocery store.
Right.
First and foremost, try to find someone local in your area, scout them out, but it's not going to be easy. You're not going to just Google it, find it, and order, right? You're going to have to do some work and figure out, okay, is this farmer really into it, or just the conventional way, right?
Right.
It's not going to be cut and dry. It's a journey, but it's good because then you kind of know what to look for and how to order food and what to look for when you're tasting food, right? You can just kind of tell now, that's store-bought, conventional raised, this is grass-fed, this is, regular chicken egg versus a pasture chicken egg. You can kind of find the subtle differences once you do it a lot. So, and that's what you want, right? You want to be able to refine your own senses. So
you guys, I know you and Christy both have experience with the milk.
I was just going to say something about that.
Can you guys kind of expand on that a little bit? Because I need to find a place to get the milk, but kind of pros, cons, time. I don't know. Just tell me about the milk, please.
Yeah. I mean, really, raw milk is like one of the superfoods on the planet. So you made a comment earlier about, you thought, doctors say, oh yeah, cut out dairy, cut out dairy, cut out dairy. Well, there is some truth in that, because the pasteurization of milk does eliminate a lot of bacteria and enzymes in the milk. It doesn't necessarily eliminate vitamins, but it denatures the milk because you're heating it at 150 degrees or higher. Or whatever, 140 degrees or higher, whatever it is. It's a flash instant heat. And, is it bad? Well, no, you can drink that milk, fine. But you drink that milk for 30 years, then all of a sudden, these little chronic issues pop up. People ask, well, why? It's like, well, it comes back to the general principle of eating raw, real, nutritious foods. And anything that's not raw, it's altered in some way, it takes more effort for the body to get rid of the junk. So if you flash pasteurize or ultra pasteurize milk and you drink that all the time, it's denatured milk. It's not nourishing your body, which what raw milk does. So, and Christy can jump in, but one other example is, tell me this: if you leave out raw good milk on the counter, it stays good essentially for 2 weeks.
Right.
Right. You leave raw milk, it'll separate into essentially cheese and then whey. And then you leave that cheese out even longer, and it can turn into butter or a different type of cheese, and it's still good. You leave pasteurized milk out on the counter for more than a day, and you're going to get growth on it, mold and growth on it. Why? Because that tissue is dead or dying, and so mold is getting there and getting it, eating up those dead tissue. But raw milk that's living and real, you can leave it on the counter for 2 weeks. So think about when people are scared about not pasteurizing, and now you get E. coli, and it's like, no, of course you still have to take care of and be cleanliness when you process and distribute raw milk. Of course you have to do that, of course. But like I said, the example I just gave should give you an indication on what's healthier for you or not.
You know, my granddaughter, we take her down to the milk farm, and she gets herself some raw milk from the cow. Is this raw milk or milk from the cow? She says. She knows the difference. We'll have that. And as soon as she knows we got it from the farm, she wants it right away. And when she tastes it, she literally starts making those noises. Num, 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 just yum, yum, yum. She wants more of it. You can take a really good organic, still processed or pasteurized milk, you know, the kind that has the cream up on top and all of that, really good whole milk. And she'll taste that, and it's like, well, I'll have some, but it's not the same like the raw milk. You can always tell the difference. She can tell the difference. And I think it's because of what her body's craving.
That's a good story.
You do taste a difference. It's well worth it. The other thing I had heard about the raw milk is that the only reason why they pasteurize it is so that it can withstand travel and transportation. So it has longer shelf life.
Right.
Really, if you can get your raw milk, that's just much better for you. Yep. And you don't have as many allergic reactions, if you will. If you are sensitive to dairy, you may not have that lactose intolerance to raw milk, but that's only what I've heard. I don't have that problem, but I'd hate to be somebody that has that problem and say, hey, yeah, you know, they said, give it a try, and it's awful.
Right. Is there an issue with finding it? That's one thing.
In some places you cannot find it. Yeah.
It's a battle. So every state has their own laws. Some states are better than others to purchase raw milk. Some states are very hard to get raw milk. So it depends on your state. And I don't know which state is which. Tennessee is pretty easy to get raw milk. You can buy directly from farmers. You can't really buy raw milk in any commercial environment.
Right.
You have to get it essentially directly from a farmer because of all the regulation, but you can do it.
Do you have a suggestion for people that do not have access to raw milk?
Rawmilk.org, I think. Let's see here. So the Weston A Price website has another website. So I got it right here. Let me just pull it up.
I put the Weston A Price links in the description box below for those of you watching on YouTube. And then I'll put any other links that Scott shares here today. I'll put those in there as well.
But yeah, there's I think it's just raw.
Yeah, because that might be hard to find in some places.
Oh, it's hard if you don't have a farm that will process the milk. Yeah.
Realmilk.com.
Realmilk.com.
Yep. And there, and you'll be able to find something in your area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Well worth it.
Yeah, and some, depending on the state, right, they'll get tricky with the wording. So one good way around it is you'll say, "Oh, this is raw milk for cats or dogs."
Right.
So that's one way to distribute it. You can say, "Oh, well, this is raw milk for cats or dogs," and that's totally
that's fine, right?
Not against the law. Yeah, you can give raw milk to cats or dogs, no problem. So you can sell raw milk or cats. Sell raw milk to cats and dogs, and purchase it. And then distribute it yourself.
You can give them that. You can give them ivermectin. You know, all kinds of,
Right.
it's not the people. The people can't have any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I just looked on this map, and in our area, the farm that we go to get the raw milk is on here. And it's really the only one in the area. The others, I believe, are 100 to 200 miles away.
Wow.
I talked to the owner of this farm, and they deliver a 200-mile radius.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a tough business.
Oh, you can pre-order your cheese for Christmas on this rawmilk.com.
That's awesome.
Actually, for some reason, it just took me to the Trethewin brothers. I don't know if that, I'm not pronouncing it correctly, but
I love it.
No, it was real milk.
Yeah, realmilk.com.
I said raw milk.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Realmilk.com, guys.
That's why you got the brothers. Yeah. But what was their name? Trothel Brothers? Something like that?
Trethone, something like that.
Huh.
A milk finder.
This is fabulous, Scott.
Oh,
you know, my granddaughter, I can tell because she goes back and forth between her parents. One does not follow a healthy diet, if you will. Lots of going out to pizza and just crap food. And the other one, she's a vegan, but she doesn't feed the daughter vegan food at all. She knows better than that. But you can see like she gets little rashes here on the side, like little prickly, hard little rashes. And it is like pulling teeth to tell these guys, maybe it's her diet. Maybe you should, start eliminating some things and see if it clears that up, and cook your food.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. So we went. Oh, go ahead.
It's a shame because I think, as you said, it's a cumulative effect. I suffered from severe fibromyalgia just a few years ago, and that precipitated where I couldn't work anymore. And then I came across getting some good information. It started off like with Dr. Berg, and it went on to other things. And I'd say over a couple of years of just going into whole ancient type of foods is what I call it, a proper human diet, if you will. Mm-hmm. It pretty much dialed down the fibromyalgia to where every once in a while I'll get a flare up with it. I'll feel more of the inflammation than anything else, but nothing like it used to be. And it's all because of the food. It wasn't because of medications at all. In fact, I don't take hardly any medication really whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
So it's all because of food, the right foods.
I mean, if one other comment about kind of just hearing your story, if you're curious and some of this information is resonating with you, but you're not sure yet, you're still just trying to figure it out. You haven't had that aha moment or red pill like I did with my daughter. But you want to get into it, I highly recommend going to a conference or listening to the Weston A Price podcast, and hearing other people's stories is powerful because it's real. Yeah. And, you hear Christy's story with fibromyalgia, or my story with our firstborn. Man, there are lots of other stories out there. People with Parkinson's disease that just go away with all the medications after a year of a good raw, diet, eating good raw milk and good raw, good foods and organ meats and bone broths and cutting out processed food. You can just see these degenerative, labeled as degenerative or, genetic, or these illnesses just go away. Right. And it's not as rare as you might think. So.
Question for you. You had mentioned you started off with the Nourishing Traditions cookbook. Mm-hmm. And when we were looking at that page, I had noticed that they had a Nourishing Traditions cookbook for children. Have
Mhm.
you looked at that? Is there a big difference between the two books?
Yeah, one is to like cook with like a little bit like a 9 or over year old, right? So
Okay.
for them to cook in it.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Children's cookbook. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, but she has a couple, and she has like a nourishing fats book, nourishing bone broth book, all nourishing traditions, kind of the same line of books, and they're all just go into more detail.
I just found her blog.
Her blog is great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
She doesn't update it very much, but the
And
Weston
the
A Price,
information's good. She probably doesn't need to, right?
right. Let's see, what else here do I have? Yeah, we talked about it takes a while to see some of these effects. So a lot of times too, you'll have some of these foods, right? And like, oh, it's good, but like, I don't feel any different. And it's like, well, really, if try committing yourself to some of these principles, take a couple, one or two, do them all, and do them for, a month or two, and then stop and then see how you feel. Don't do it for a couple days and see how you feel. Do it for a month or two and then stop and then tell me how you feel, or tell yourself how you feel. And that's a better way to gauge some of these things, especially some of these health topics, because that's what it kind of takes for the body to adjust and to heal. Like I said earlier, start taking liver the first time, you might have a detox response.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's good. Right. So same thing with food, right? You start changing your diet. It's not like you're going to get energized like Superman does with the sun. You start giving yourself nutritious food. The first thing your body's going to do is start to heal, which means get rid of junk, which means you feel sick, right?
Right.
You're going to have, symptoms of being sick, but it's good. It means your body's getting rid of junk. So,
That's a good point. When I started my journey, I went really slow with it because there was a warning about the detox effect. I mean, and it could be pretty horrific. I mean, it knocks people down depending on how severely affected you are and how long you've had these toxins in your body. And so if you just go ahead and hit this diet, a diet adjustment, if you will, like
cold turkey,
hardcore, cold turkey, you're going to have headaches, you're going to feel sick, you're going to be brain fogged out, fatigued. I mean, you're withdrawing really is what it is. So go easy, drink a lot of water, lots of water.
Yeah.
It's so true. Good point.
Yeah.
Well worth it though.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? Anyone comments making?
This is fantastic.
Anyone else want to know anything? I mean, please reach out. What was that, Melissa?
I was just looking to see if there was any questions in the chat, and I don't see any questions in the chat.
If anyone has questions about baby formula, please reach out. One of the things, I don't have a web page, or I don't, but it's just community. I'm willing to help anybody who's asking, because who doesn't want to help feed their kids healthy food?
Oh
right?
gosh, yeah.
So if anyone has questions about baby formula or foods, or how do I get your 2-year-old to stop snacking so much, or tips or tricks, I'd love to share and probably learn something too.
That's great. Yeah. That I bet you do have a bunch of advice, tips, and tricks for that. Being a stay-at-home dad with 3, you definitely have your hands full. So are we all right to put your email in the description box?
That'd be great.
We'll put that in the YouTube description for those of you that are watching. Wow, this has been a fantastic conversation. There's so many questions. I'm like, can't you just come here and do it all for me?
I have a question. Do you mind?
No, absolutely.
So have you joined as a member to the Weston A Price Foundation? So I'm reading here, and it looks as though if you become a member, then they can share even more information with you, which they're very generous with it as it is. But I think I was reading here that you just need to be able to become a member for them to share some other in-depth information that might be a problem for them if they were just freely giving it out.
Right.
What was it? Like laboratory research, legislative advocacy, vaccine awareness, all of those types of things. Restaurant rating project, those things, you have to go behind a paywall to be able to get that information.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. I think it's well worth it.
But I mean, you could spend days going through their website. I mean, and give yourself a little bit of time, and man, there's so much good information on there. I was impressed. I am impressed with it.
I think some of our guests here on the space, I know that they do like the rabbit hole. So this would be another one to go down.
Yeah.
It was very good. Hey, can I share something that happened during the show here?
Yeah.
Bitcoin went over 40,000.
All right.
Oh,
not
nice.
to change topics, but this is kind of how we all got together. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, that, and I guess gold price went
Gold
up
went a little parabolic. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody's like, well, things are looking up, people. Right?
Yes. Well, this is fabulous. I'm going to go through this website and thoroughly get some information out. I haven't listened to any of the podcasts, so I think I'm going to do that tomorrow morning during my morning routine.
Yeah, they have lots of different topics to kind of search, see if there's something that, jots your eye. They usually have a lot of good guests and a lot of real, like I said, a lot of real stories of people, and they always say, so the Weston A Price Foundation, so the abbreviation is WAF, so WAPF, Weston A Price Foundation. And so, for young parents say, well, do you have a WAF baby? Right. It's essentially, do you have a baby that has followed all of the guidelines, right, through pregnancy and through infancy, right? You have a WAF baby. And so, yep, we have a WAF baby. So they have in their newsletter, they have, pictures and moms that say, yep, I have a WAF baby. And every mom, the story is the same. Happiest baby, not colicky, sleeping through the night, early, nice, good wide face, eats great, like those are just, every WAF baby's like that. And so it's like, kind of makes you wonder, like, raising kids doesn't have to be hard, and I think nutrition can contribute a lot to a lot of that in the early years.
There's just something about eating healthy food, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible, like you said about your daughter asking you for the liver, and there's a lot of parents, and then their kids won't eat anything. They refuse to eat, and they just want to eat junk. But if you have the good nutrition, then all those other things kind of fall in line. It seems like, right? None of the colicky and fidgeting and emotional. It sounds like it's well worth the effort. And it's worth it. And a little bit of pre-planning. I'm telling myself this out loud. I'm recording this so that I can play it back and say, you said, Melissa. But I mean, I love your idea of, especially like making the bone broth and putting in the freezer and all these things. It's a date night. Prepare some stuff for the weeks ahead, and just do it. I just need to learn how to do it correctly. But I definitely think it would be beneficial for me to do that.
The Facebook group, if you're ever on Facebook, is very helpful. Lots of people there posting questions. A lot of people answer. I answer, or my wife answers a bunch.
Am I going to find that on the web? Because I'll put that link to that also.
I don't know.
I can search it out, and then I'll try and put the link in the description box below also for that.
Yeah.
I see here that they're talking about the Prime Act as well. And that was interesting because we had brought that up on our radio show today, because that's a very important issue about how our meats are labeled.
Yeah.
You know, being product of USA does not mean it was raised and nurtured here in the United States. So if you can go look at some of that as well, that's a very important act, and you need to call your local congressman and your senator and say, I want you to support the Farm Bill. Make sure the Prime Act is part of that.
Yeah.
Good point.
It's really important.
And they bring, so the Weston A Price Foundation is big supporters in legislation. Their primary focus, all the donation dollars go to milk. So the Real Milk campaign and changing laws in every 50 states. That's like one of their biggest goals. But yeah, then they also do Prime Act. They're trying to work with every state, just essentially to let farmers sell good food.
Yeah.
That's really what it is.
Yeah.
Why should anyone tell me you can't buy food from somebody,
Exactly.
Anyway, I was going to say, Melissa, you're talking about like other, like the bone broth in the freezer. Earlier, we were talking about French fries. I wanted to circle back,
Circle back to the fries.
Man, I'm telling you, it is so making your own French fries is great. French fries is fun and it's easy, especially with kids, right? It's relatively not messy. Pop it in the oven, and then you got something warm and crunchy, and usually they like it. Well, French fries, essentially every pack now is pre-fried, right? In a seed oil, right? There's none now that are not. So I love having French fries with my kids, even if I did, good bun and, good pasture raised, grass-fed, grass-finished ground beef, right? Still couldn't get around the French fries. So I was looking on Weston A Price's blog on their website and I was like, all right, there's gotta be French fry, how to make French fries, right? And of course there's there's a bunch of recipes and it's easy. It's really easy. So go get potatoes from wherever, try to get the best locally sourced, right? But go get russet potatoes, cut them in French fry slicers, or use the, the mandarin? What's the mandolin? You slice it,
Right.
what we're talking about? It's called the mandolin. Right. And there's a insert to make French fry slices, right? So you just cut a bunch, you soak them in cold water for an hour or two. And so do a big batch, do like 40 potatoes, right? Soak a bunch for a couple hours in super ice cold water, and then pat them dry. And then you can do two things. You can freeze those if you want, or what we do is take and do just like a big fry, like a fish fry, but it's a potato fry, right? And fry them all in tallow or lard. Heat up a big wok on your stove. It won't spatter at all if it's good lard or tallow. Fry them for five minutes. You can do fry them for 5 minutes, take them off for a couple minutes, fry them again for 5 minutes, get them real crispy, or you can leave them in there for like 7 to 8 minutes. They also get crispy. They get a little more hotter on the inside. And then freeze them. Freeze a bunch. And so that's what we do. We'll freeze like 4 or 5 gallon freezer bags full of French fries, but individuals, right? Enough for our dinner. And then so when I'm ready for French fries one night, we do hamburgers, take them out, put them in the oven for 20 minutes, and you got awesome crispy fries that are delicious.
That's so awesome, man.
Yeah.
And what's really cool too is that you and your wife are on the same page.
Yes,
and you
that's
guys are
huge.
doing this. I mean, I'm just so impressed. I think it's fantastic. What a great example for your kids.
Well, it's a great gift to your kids because you're not poisoning them as a young people, and they end up figuring this out. I think that there's children who have developmental issues, maybe, vaccines get a lot of blame for causing autism and cognitive issues and behavior issues. I do think food has a lot to do with that as well.
Mm-hmm. I would also agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This has just been fantastic.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else? Like we're coming up on 2 hours. I I was like, well, are we going to do an hour show or are we going to just go for it? Is there
Yeah.
anything that we didn't touch on that you wanted to touch on,
No,
before we go?
not really.
I do
Good.
This
want to
is
say this.
fantastic.
I would love to have you back because I also know, and I know we don't have time to talk about it, but this is for another show. I also know that you happen to know a lot about water and the importance of water and the structure of water and all of that. And I refrain from asking questions because that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I wanted to save it for another show, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay.
But I would say, kind of parting words is that it's hard, and it's bucking what you've been trained to do. And so it will be hard going to the grocery store, picking something up, cooking something quick, requires, if you want to do that, requires preparation and
Right.
thought and practice. And when you start off something new, it is hard at first and takes forever. And you're like, that's not worth it. But you do it a couple times, you get better at it, you get more efficient at it, you start making extra batches, freezing stuff, and then you kind of get in this groove. And then all of a sudden you're realizing, oh man, I don't really go to the grocery store anymore very often to get any, to get very much, right? I'm ordering my milk online, I'm ordering a half cow or a half pig from farmers and putting it in the freezer. Maybe I go to the store to get some vegetables or some fruit, get my raw milk, get my eggs. It's like, then you're really not going to the store for anything. And then you're preparing all this stuff. And, it took me 6 months, a good 6 months to kind of get into it, of trial and error, even with bread making and so, but just start and don't get overwhelmed. And there's tons of people out there that can help you with questions. So it's hard, but it's supposed to be, because you're changing your routine.
Right.
yeah. Wow. This has been fantastic.
Well, thanks for having me on.
And
Yes, thank you.
love
It's good to see you. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
great to see you both too. It's
uh,
like, it's been a while, but it feels like also it hasn't.
Right.
That's how you know you're good friends.
exactly. Well, you
All
want to close her down?
Yeah.
You do the exit and I'll do the try to shut her down streams.
Well, we want to thank everybody for being here, and follow us at vitabroadcastnetwork.com and on social media at Vita Broadcast. So Scott, thank you so much for being on Beyond the Brink, and we'll see you back here again soon.
Sounds good.
Bye, guys.
Good night,
Thanks so
everybody.